Hey YouTube, Kevin Cleary with a knife video. Got a blade for you today that was one that initially didn't excite me that much, but it's sort of grown on me over time. And even when I finally got one, it was more for review and because it's a new blade. And I thought, you know what, I'll get it and I can use it for the channel, and maybe I'll just pass it on. Maybe I'll just sell it on Blade Forums or something. But that's not what happened. This is the Zero Tolerance 0630. And the story of this knife is, I picked it up, as I said, thinking, it's new and I like the blade shape, but I don't think it's probably for me, so I'll probably just review it and pass it on, Anyway, I got this in the mail, opened it up, started looking at it. It was a little stiff initially, and I was like, yeah, it's okay. I'm not sure if I'm a big fan of the thumb disc, and the wave opening feature does work, but, wave feature has never been a big deal for me. It's not like, so I know some guys, like every knife they own has to have it, and for me that wasn't a thing. So I was like, yeah, it's okay. I'll carry it around for a few days, maybe a week, to make sure I've got a good handle. I'll cut a bunch of stuff with it and then see how it goes. Okay, so that was my initial impression. Well, by the second day, I started to say, hey, this is a pretty cool blade. I really like the way the blade looks. And you do this thing where you pull a knife out, especially when it's new, and you kind of pull it out and you check out the blade, and you see how the light plays off it. And I'm going through that process, and as I do, but the second day, I start to think, this is actually a really cool blade. I really like this. And by the third day, maybe fourth day, I was totally loving everything about this knife, okay? So it really took some time to grow on me, both before I bought it, and then finally I thought, I do like it enough that I'm gonna pay for it, and I just don't know if I'm gonna keep it. I did get a really good deal, so I thought, hey, for that deal, I can get it, I can review it, put it on the channel, and then maybe pass it on, but anyway. So by the third or fourth day, I was loving this knife. And that's where I've stayed, okay? This is a much better knife than I initially thought. And I really, really like it more than, again, more than I thought I would. So what do I like about it? Well, I like the sort of throwback to the traditional Zero Tolerance with the G10 and the titanium, the bolt pivot. I like the blade shape. I love the blade shape. And initially, when I first saw this knife, I had a brief discussion just saying to a friend of mine, and I mentioned to a couple other people maybe on YouTube, so if you're watching this, you go, hey, you said that to me, that's fine. The blade shape, okay, I really, really like the blade shape, and I remember saying before, hey, this is a big improvement in terms of blade over the 0620, okay? The 0620 was a similar design. In fact, the handle I think is exactly the same other than the grooves in the G10, but the blade was a tanto blade, and so I was like, yeah, it's okay. I saw this and I was like, hey, that's a big improvement. I love that blade shape much, much more than the other version. So that was kind of where my discussion ended. That's where my thought process ended. Hey, good on you, ZT. I like that blade shape better. Hopefully it goes really well for you. And of course, this is a Zero Tolerance Emerson collaboration. This is the last thing I'm going to say by way of introduction, okay? If you're watching just wanting to know if it's a good knife, I think you already know what I think of it. Last thing though, by way of introduction, this is a Zero Tolerance Emerson collaboration, and many people have pointed out that Zero Tolerance does Emerson better than Emerson. And I'm going to add my name to that list. I've had Emersons in hand and I've tried to like them. But I just can't get into it. I know there are some Emerson fans out there who are wildly in love with Emerson knives, and that's great, good on you. But for me, they just don't do much. This, though, is something I really, really like. Now, the wave feature, hey, that's a great feature, okay? Ernest Emerson really came up with something cool when he did the wave feature. And so I'm glad to have a knife with that wave feature, but that's about where my interest ends. Now in this case, I love the blade shape, and that does come from like the CQ C8, and I think the Commander and a couple other Emersons have this sort of more traditional tactical knife blade shape, which is really cool, and it looks great. By the way, I know we're not at the blade yet, but I love the look of this blade shape in combination with the stonewash on the flats and the grinder satin on the on the grinds. Looks really, really awesome, okay? So that's one of the things that kind of grew on me over time. As you get this in hand, you get to see the blade firsthand right there in real life. It just looks amazing. All right, so now that you kind of know my introduction and how I came to have this knife and like this knife, let's go ahead and give you the specifics so you can decide whether or not you would like it as well. All right, so overall size on this is 8.5 inches. The blade length is 3 5/8. The handle length is 4 5/8. It weighs in at a pretty heavy 6.3 ounces, and I will say that's kind of a detraction. 6.3 ounces for an 8.5 inch knife is a little too heavy. And one of the things that zero tolerance doesn't do, you may be able to see this right here. If you look in the back, or I'll turn it this way and you can look in the front. If you look up here on that stainless steel scale under the G10, it is not milled out at all. You know, so maybe that's a little DIY project you could do if you buy this knife, take that scale off and drill out the stainless steel side a little bit. It would be nice if ZT did that, okay? I don't know how much weight you would save, but even any little bit would be nice because that is a little bit heavy. Now, having said that, I've got to say it carries really well. Okay, I don't notice that 6 ounces when I'm carrying it, and I'll be honest, 6 ounces is not a big deal for me. When you start to get up around 7, 8, 9 ounces, then yes, it gets to the point where, for me anyway, maybe you're different, okay? But for me, that starts to get too heavy to carry on a regular basis, with, of course, the exception of the 0200, which I love. I would think I would carry this if it weighed 10 ounces. You know, maybe not, but I really, really like this knife. And I'll show it to you again in comparison, but it is a fairly heavy knife that I still like and I still carry. So let's come back to this one. That weight is a little high for me, but certainly doable. All right, let's come back and deal with some comparisons. That's where I want to go next. I've been trying to do this with every video. Go ahead. One of the things sometimes videos just happen, okay, and you say what you say. But one of the things I've been making a determined effort to do recently is to bring in a few more comparisons, both for size and price point, and maybe something similar from the same company. And so we're going to do that next. I think this compares well, and if you own some of these other knives, at least that gives you a sense for how it compares and whether or not this is something that you would like. So first off, here's another newer zero tolerance. This is 0562. Obviously this is the carbon fiber and M390. This knife isn't available in that, and I don't know, maybe it will be. Maybe that'll be like a next year 2016 type of thing, because the 0620, of course, it does come in carbon fiber and M390, so it may be that that's coming for the 0630. This is M390 and carbon fiber, and you can see that the size on this, by the way, this is the same size as an XM18, so if you're familiar with that, you can kind of get a good idea about how the sizes compare there. Let's do a couple other very popular knives. I'll bring that 0200 back in a second, but before I do, there's the 0560. Now, here's what I mean by weight, okay? These knives weigh the same, even though you can see the 560 is quite a bit bigger, okay? So, by the way, this is a great knife, and this has some of those things that this one is missing, where the stainless steel liner side is milled out on this one. There's the 0200. Seems like we've got all zero tolerance, but I do have one other to show you here. If you're looking for a good sort of combat blade, these are discontinued now. They're very, very effective. This is a very capable blade. I love this knife, highly recommended. And so if you're interested in one of these, go pick one up, because they are discontinued. I don't know how long they're going to be easily available. Anyway, there's how they compare. The 0200 is just a little bit bigger. Finally, last but not least, I guess least in terms of price point, but if you're looking for a combat knife and that's why you're considering the 0630, I don't know, I would tell anyone, police, firefighter, law enforcement, anyone who needs a knife that is set up for difficult circumstances, the Recon One is a great option. Very, very good price point, tough as nails. Every bit as tough as any zero tolerance you're going to come across, okay? So, great blade. And of course, this is such a common knife that maybe you have this, and so that'll give you a sense for size. You can see again that the the 0630 is smaller. All right, so those are the comparisons I've got for you. And we want to move on now to the blade. So why don't we zoom in a little bit so you can see what I'm talking about when I talk about some of the finer details here. Come on, there we go. And luckily the camera's going to cooperate well. Man, it's hard to always get a knife to work right on camera. There we go. Okay, so there is that S35 VN blade. It is 3 5/8 inches, 3 5/8 inches of cutting edge. You can see that there's a stonewash finish on the flats and on the back, and then grinder satin on the bevels here. So really, really nice looking blade. I love this clip point design with sort of the upswept look to it. Just looks really, really awesome. Of course, you can see the wave feature there right away. And on this side, you've got zero tolerance. On the other side, you just got, you know, that this is an Emerson design. It's a 0630, and you've got the serial number there on the blade. Okay. I love the way that grinder satin looks. I hope that it's coming through on the camera. Let me zoom in just a little bit more for you there. All right, now focus. All right, hopefully, come on. Okay, so there you go. So you can see, yeah, the stonewash finish, and it does go nicely with the titanium. This is just a really, really attractive looking blade. In addition to being attractive, I like the fact that it's just a good combination of all the things you look for. You know, you've got a nice acute point while still getting a lot of strength. That sort of diamond shape here is pretty common. You know, you're almost hard pressed to find a zero tolerance that doesn't have it. I know I'm having focus issues again. There we go. So that nice diamond shape, and you can see that there's a lot of strength carried out to the tip of this knife, even though it does cut really well. So it's a great combination of strength and cutting power. Gonna slice really well with that belly, and you've still got a bit of straight edge for like utility tasks or maybe whittling or something like that. So got a great blade there. There we go. Sorry about that, went out of focus on me again. Anyway, really good blade shape, cuts really, really well. Plus, you've got a lot of strength, which is a really nice combination. The S35 VN steel holds an edge like crazy, takes an edge really, really well. Just, you know, it's one of those, there are a few steels, there's a short list of steels that just seem to go above and beyond the Call of Duty in the sense that they hold an edge really well, and yet you can still sharpen them. And S35 VN is one of those steels. D2 is another one. There's a few more. I'm not gonna, this is not a steel video, but S35 VN is an excellent, excellent steel. Okay. One thing that I will say about cutting at this point is the wave feature does create a nice thumb ramp. If maybe it takes something away, like I will say about these wave features, they do kind of look a little bit odd. You know, you sort of look like, why have you got that weird thing sticking out of your knife, okay? And people who don't know are going to be like, that is really, really strange. So there you go. There's one last look at the blade. I'm going to back off just a little. There we go. It's easier to keep in focus at about this point. So we'll back off a little for lockup and deployment, which we want to talk about next. So obviously, there we go. It deploys very well as long as, by the way, any frame lock here, watch me if I put pressure on that lock bar, you can see that I'm having a difficult time. Back off a little bit, and there you go. Comes out no problem. So again, like many tie frame locks, you got to keep your fingers off the lock bar if you want it to work properly. Lockup is nice and early. You probably see that there now. By the way, now that we're zoomed in a little bit, I'll try to let you see that there's no milling in that stainless steel liner. There you go. You can see the standoffs there as well since we're kind of doing that. But anyway, lockup and deployment. The lock is great. It does have the stainless steel lock insert, which serves both to increase the longevity of the lock, reduce wear, and be an over travel stop. Okay, so all of that is really good. Stop pin here in the back is nice and big, and it's rounded. That rounding just increases surface area and again reduces wear and tear to make your knife last a little longer. All right, let's see what else we want to say. I will roll in just for a couple seconds here, a couple quick shots of deploying the knife out of pocket. It does deploy really well either with the thumb stud or with the wave feature, and so yeah, that's both of those are a real win on this knife. One thing that's cool about this knife is, for me anyway, I have some knives that have a wave feature, and it's like I can't get them out of my pocket without waving them open. This one is not that way. I seem to be able to get it out of my pocket without opening if I want to. You know, if I'm in a situation where I don't want a knife blade flying out and everyone going, whoa, what are you doing? I can get this out and then open it by hand after, or if I so choose, just by, you know, changing the angle of my extraction a little bit, I can get it to wave open every time with consistency. So that's one thing that I really look for in a wave featured knife, that I have the option of deploying or not deploying out of my pocket. And certainly that is an option on this that works really well. Now, what about the handle? So there's lockup and deployment, both totally acceptable, everything you look for in a typical zero tolerance, especially, you know, these days. It's got the stuff we want. I like the stainless steel lock bar insert, that kind of stuff. Now, what about this handle? The handle, you know, it's okay. It doesn't look awesome, but I will say in hand it feels really good. The G10 texturing is very well done. Reminds me of, you know, Spyderco's G10. It's not quite as aggressive as Cold Steel's sort of brick pattern, but it is, you know, it feels a lot like if you've got a military or a paramilitary or, you know, a Mannix or something like that, you're going to be used to this sort of really fine but very grippy G10 texturing. And so it does texture very well. The jimping, here's what I've got to say about the jimping. Back here on the handle, see where my thumb is now, jimping here is actually quite good. For some reason though, where of course you're likely to put your thumb up here on the blade, the last bit of jimping here on the thumb ramp slash wave feature is pretty slick. I don't get any traction at all really on that jimping. Probably different if you had gloves on, but I rarely wear gloves when I'm carrying my knives, so that doesn't mean much to me. Yeah, I find this jimping to be quite slick. Now back here, it's quite functional. So that could be just a little bit better. And I think just the edges, if they were just a little bit sharper there on the back of that wave feature, I think it would function considerably better. You do have that nice deep finger choil, which is always good. You can see that it fits really nicely in hand. And it is very, very comfortable. Jimping on this portion is kind of odd. I would expect to see some jimping here for a reverse grip, but there's nothing. Instead, the jimping is here, which, I don't know, doesn't do a whole lot for me. Maybe there's some other reason about that someone wants to comment on. But it is comfortable in reverse grip. It's comfortable pretty well in every grip. It does have a two-way positionable pocket clip. Okay, so it's going to be tip up only, but it can be tip up right hand or tip up left hand. Now I will say on the left hand side that G10 is going to tear up your pockets a little bit more, but that's okay. You know, lefties have to go through a lot of struggles in life, right? And that can just be one more. Now, let's see if I'm missing anything. Oh yeah, you can see the two standoffs there, and there is this pin at the back to serve as a spot for a lanyard to go. I don't do lanyards, but if you do that, you do have that option to put a lanyard around this little pin at the back, which is actually a really nice way of allowing you to put a lanyard on without sort of messing up the overall look and feel of the knife. And, you know, not every lanyard hole messes it up. By the way, I forgot to mention this earlier, but this knife is very smooth. I'll let you see. You can see it does free drop, which is really awesome because guess what? No ball bearing pivot. I love that. You guys have heard me over and over again. It seems like the last, I don't know, few months, every knife I've had on the camera has had a ball bearing pivot. So it's really nice to see a knife that is high quality, that functions really well, but doesn't have a ball bearing pivot. And you know, I think that it's perfectly suited to the hard use sort of role of this knife. And frankly, I think any knife that's really designed to be like combat folder, wilderness folder, anything like that, should be phosphor bronze bushings. And this one is phosphor bronze instead of ball bearings, which I think is a big win. So let's back out now that you've had a good look at this blade and a good look at my face now. I'm a really big fan of this knife. You know, it just does a lot of things right for me. It's comfortable in hand, it carries really well, it flies out of the handle whether you are just flicking it open with the thumb stud, or whether you're using the wave feature to get it open out of your pocket. It just works every time, which is exactly what you want. There's nothing, you know, I don't know, there's nothing uncomfortable, there's nothing difficult about deploying this knife, carrying this knife, or using this knife. And because of all of that, it just grew on me more and more every day. Add to that, it functions really well and it's super tough. And then it does all that stuff with this amazing looking blade, which is just so cool. It's nice to see a blade with a little bit of a difference. You know, you got this nice upswept look on this with the clip point, almost like a Bowie style knife, or almost like, you know, a more traditional combat knife. And that is really, really cool. All right, and so you've got that nice traditional look, while at the same time, you know, nothing about this knife says it's old-fashioned or anything like that. So it's just a great, you know, aesthetically, functionally, overall, just a fantastic knife. The only hit that I can give this knife is it's a little heavy for its size, but even that, at 6 ounces, for me, that is not the end of the world. I have no problem carrying a 6-ounce folding knife. All right, so that's my take on the Zero Tolerance 0630, a total win in my book. And as I said, it did take some time for this one to grow on me, but after about a week, I just love it more and more and more. Now, you know, after that first week where it took to kind of grow on me, yeah, I just totally big fan of this knife. I think it's a real win for Zero Tolerance, and I love the fact that it's a bit of a throwback to some of the previous Zero Tolerances that we came to know and love. All right, talk to you later, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video.